Welcome to the deep dive. We got some really fascinating material from you guys this time. Excerpts from Jacob Needleman's What is God?
Mm.
So I think it's time to, jump right in.
Yeah, I mean, Needleman's a pretty compelling figure, wouldn't you say? A philosophy professor who's really grappled with some of the biggest questions out there. What's really interesting to me is that he didn't come at this from a traditionally religious background. He started out looking for truth and reality, and the whole idea of God kind of came into the picture later.
Yeah, exactly. He started with this really basic desire to understand what's real without, all the preconceived religious ideas. So I guess for this deep dive, what we're going to do is trace how his understanding of God kind of changed and evolved based on what you sent us. We're going to focus on his actual experiences, the stuff that really shaped him, and how he went from these intellectual ideas to a more, felt reality. And there are some pretty major turning points along the way, and it seems like it all goes back to this powerful childhood memory.
Right, like a pivotal experience. He was 9 years old back in 1943, outside with his dad, just looking up at the night sky.
And then he describes this almost magical thing that happens. The sky isn't just a backdrop anymore. It's filled with, he says, millions of stars. And it's this whole new way of seeing just kind of switched on inside him, like the universe was opening up to him for the first time.
Yeah.
So you get this sense right from the start that, for Needleman, the divine wasn't some theological concept, but a very direct, almost sensory experience.
Absolutely. And it's in that moment of, I guess you could say, awe, that his father simply says, "That's God." I mean, it's such a simple statement, but so profound, right? Needleman really emphasizes how powerful and lasting this magical moment was for him. It wasn't a lecture or anything, but this direct, visceral connection to something so much bigger than himself.
And he talks about becoming aware of these lucid moments, these instances of heightened awareness that would just kind of pop up now and then. It's interesting how he viewed these moments.
Yeah, like glimpses of what he called ultimate reality. But the key thing here is that these weren't intellectual insights. They were deeply felt experiences. And what's even more striking is how he noticed that we tend to just let these moments slip away. Instead of making us more curious or yearning for something more, we just cover them over or ignore them.
We get these brief openings into something deeper, but we're usually too distracted to even notice, let alone explore what they might mean.
Right.
So with this feeling that there was something more to discover, it makes sense that Needleman was really struck by what Kant had to say about the limitations of human reason.
Right, and this intellectual journey really takes off when he encounters Kant's work as a college sophomore. That first page of Critique of Pure Reason had a huge impact on him.
Yeah, I mean, to open a philosophy book and be moved to tears, that's pretty intense.
What really resonated with Needleman was this idea from Kant that human reason is burdened by questions it can't answer. Questions it asks but can never definitively answer. For Kant, reason doesn't show us reality as it is, but shapes how we perceive it. What we experience are appearances filtered through our own minds.
So it's our minds create the framework for how we understand the world,
Yeah.
but that same framework could be preventing us from actually grasping reality itself.
Exactly. And for Needleman, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical puzzle. It was a call, like a deep sense of a void, a fundamental uncertainty about what's real. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a real challenge to his entire way of seeing the world.
So how did he respond to this? It sounds like he went on this pretty extensive search.
He really dove in. He studied Western philosophy and theology, but also Eastern traditions like Vedanta, which is a school of Hindu philosophy, and Zen Buddhism. It was like he was searching for something that went beyond those boundaries that Kant had laid out. And this question of what is the self kind of ran through all of it. That became his doctoral dissertation topic.
What is the self? So he's grappling with this fundamental question of identity, looking at it through all these different levels. But it sounds like a personal encounter really shifted his perspective even more than all the reading.
Definitely. His meeting with the Zen Buddhist scholar D.T. Suzuki was a major turning point. Needleman describes it as immediately impactful. He said, "My mind went blank. The sight of him instantly went right through my armor. It was more than just Suzuki's words. It was his very presence."
Wow, that's powerful. And Needleman had this question ready, the one he'd been focusing on all along. What is the self?
And Suzuki's response was so simple, yet totally disarming. He asked, who is asking the question? It completely bypassed the intellectual way Needleman had framed it.
And when Needleman answers, pretty straightforwardly, "I am asking it," Suzuki just says, "Show me this eye." That must have been so frustrating, deeply unsettling.
It was. The interview ended awkwardly, and Needleman felt really unsatisfied. He even describes feeling totally adrift in spite of all his academic achievements, but then he has this incredible aha moment.
Yeah, in the middle of the night while he's sleeping, right?
Yeah, he wakes up with this sudden, clear understanding. He says, "My God, this was what he was telling me. I was supposed to find this out for myself. It was not communicable in words, in thought. It was an event, not an idea." He realized the answer to who is asking wasn't something you could explain, it was something you had to directly experience.
That's a massive shift. Going from searching for an intellectual answer to realizing that it takes a direct personal experience. And that's what leads him to this concept of the two selves, right?
Yes, he starts to see a difference between the surface level self, the one that's always thinking and questioning, and this deeper self. He describes it as knowing and sensing and yearning within the depths of one's embryonic and timeless selfhood. And he starts to believe that this deeper part of us is already connected to something higher.
So this higher vibration within ourselves is what actually sparks our curiosity about God, the impulse to think about the question. But we're just not tuned into it most of the time. We're insensitive to it.
Right, and it's through his exploration of Gurdjieff's teachings that he finds a more practical path for exploring this inner dimension. He finds a teaching, a community, a set of practices, and a guide in Jeanne de Salzmann. And what's interesting is that Gurdjieff's work didn't even mention the concept of God at first.
Which must have appealed to Needleman, considering his earlier discomfort with, like, traditional religious frameworks. I mean, here he was teaching about religion, but not personally subscribing to it.
Exactly. He found it congenial. But then there's this pivotal moment where de Salzmann talks about this inner energy, this vibration, as what the religious call God. And for Needleman, it's like these two sides of him, the intellectual seeker and the one drawn to something deeper, finally come together.
And attention becomes a really important idea for him.
Oh, absolutely. De Salzmann really emphasized attention, the ability to direct your awareness. Needleman comes to see it as a uniquely human capacity, even saying, "I am my attention."
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. I am my attention. That's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah, it suggests that our very being, who we are at our core, is tied to where we choose to focus our awareness. And he goes on to explain that when we're lost in these streams of automatic thought, we become disconnected from ourselves. Our attention is taken, swallowed. We're not present, we're just reacting without really thinking.
So all that mental chatter, our habitual emotional responses, those pull us away from actually experiencing life.
Exactly. And Needleman starts to realize that this power of attention, this inner consciousness, could open the door to the experience of God, which he begins to understand as divine attention.
Divine attention. That's a pretty fascinating way to think about it.
Yeah, he describes it as this pure, conscious energy that loves, forgives, and judges all at once. And it's everywhere. Think of those moments when your attention is totally focused, like laser sharp. He starts to see God as kind of the ultimate, all-encompassing version of that focus, divine attention, existing throughout the entire universe. And he points out that even though philosophers from Socrates to Kant might not have talked about God in these exact terms, the concept of attention itself was always there, the mystery in broad daylight, he calls it.
Like they were circling around this fundamental human faculty without fully making that connection to the divine.
Right, and de Salzmann also introduced this idea of an energy that comes from above and how the body is built to serve that energy. This brings in the idea that it's something we receive, something beyond our intellect or our ability to force into being.
This idea of needing to receive this higher attention within our bodies. It's not just mental focus. It sounds like that was a big challenge for Needleman to wrap his head around.
It was. He recognized that transforming attention takes a different kind of work, a disciplined spiritual practice or meditation. It's not just changing your thoughts, it's cultivating a different quality of awareness altogether.
And that leads to his distinction between science's external empiricism and the inner empiricism at the heart of many spiritual traditions.
Exactly. Science is mainly focused on what we can observe and verify through our senses and experiments. But Needleman argues that this misses a huge, crucial part of reality, inner experience, which can be just as real and undeniable if you engage with it through practice.
So the proof of God's existence isn't in a lab or a philosophy book. It's something you discover within yourself through your own development.
Yeah, that's his core point. The only real proof comes individually through one's own inner development. And this isn't just a mental pursuit. It requires the whole self, mind, art, and body working together. He sees it as a fundamental human potential, maybe even a necessity or a duty.
He also talks about a kind of outward proof, not in a scientific sense, but in the lives of certain people.
Right, the existence of people who are inhabited by and who manifest God. People whose lives reflect a quality of presence, compassion, or wisdom that points to something beyond the ordinary.
And then he ends with these really profound questions.
Oh, absolutely. He asks us to consider, like, how much of our understanding of God is just a projection of how this higher attention might work within us. It really makes you rethink the connection between our inner world and the divine. But if this divine attention is both loving and judging, how does he reconcile those two seemingly opposite things?
Yeah, that's a big one. He doesn't really lay out a theological answer in this text, but the way he talks about divine attention being this pure energy that acts instantly and infinitely, well, it suggests a perspective that goes beyond our limited human understanding of judgment and love as separate linear processes. It implies a unified awareness that encompasses both. And then his final question really stays with you. What is the meaning of life if we live without the yearning for what the religions call God? It makes you think about this fundamental longing we might be ignoring in modern life.
It really does. It challenges us to examine what truly motivates us, what we might be missing if we just dismiss this yearning for something more.
So to wrap up this deep dive into Needleman's journey, we see this really powerful shift from an intellectual search for truth to this realization that true understanding, especially when it comes to something like God, might actually be about direct experience and cultivating inner awareness. Those key moments like that childhood experience with the stars, reading Kant, and especially that encounter with D.T. Suzuki, they all highlight this shift. And this idea of attention being the bridge between our inner lives and the possibility of experiencing something truly profound, that's a big takeaway.
Yeah, and the idea that God, or divine attention, might be connected to our own ability to focus, and that the proof of that lies within us, that's a really unique and compelling way to look at this age-old question.
So thinking about Needleman's journey, we got to ask you, the listener, what moments of heightened awareness have you experienced? How might this idea of attention change the way you see your own inner world and maybe the possibility of something more? It's a lot to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.